49ers back out on the practice field for the first time since the 53-man roster cut down, with this roster still very much under construction. A lot of good news. Players returning from injury. Jauan Jennings, Upton, Stout. We'll talk about them in a bit because Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talked about Jauan Jennings prior to practice, and predictably it seemed that especially John was a little grumpy when having to talk about Jauan Jennings. This whole situation so murky, but good summary comment here from John Lynch talking about the entire saga.
Both things can be true. You know, he wants a new contract and he's got a hurt calf. So I think people want to assume one or the other. Both things can be true.
So calf and contract, both are true. We get it. And now the 49ers would love resolution as quickly as possible, because in this ongoing roster construction, and I'm going to summarize everything that happened today for you here in this video, but in the entire process, the 49ers seem to have shored up every single position group except for receiver. Russell Gage is going to be back on the 53-man roster. Didn't practice today because technically, as we speak, he's not on the team. The 49ers have to make a corresponding move to bring him back. Jacob Cowing is now on injured reserve. Lynch did confirm that the 49ers will be signing Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but that has not officially happened yet. So when we are back out here tomorrow morning for the next practice instant reaction, the construction should have progressed. And a lot of this is obviously contingent, maybe the Kendrick Bourne part of this, because they're interested in him as well, is contingent on Jauan Jennings, whose situation remains in a holding pattern. Anyway, we can look to see what happened at practice today. There's Mac Jones, there's Brock Purdy, and behind them, wearing the white shirt, is Curtis Rourke, the rookie 7th rounder, who will maybe be rejoining the 49ers active roster at some point this year. He's recovering from the torn ACL. There is another quarterback on his way to Santa Clara right now. That is Adrian Martinez, born in Hanford. Shout out to the 559 in Superior Dairy. Went to high school at Clovis West. Adrian Martinez, the Nebraska and Kansas State product, is going to be 49ers QB3 on the practice squad, a mobile quarterback for the 49ers. There is Upton Stout back at practice for the 49ers today after a few weeks. That is big news for the 49ers. He projects to be their starting nickelback. Stout and Chase Lucas, the two nickelbacks. And there you have a look at John York out at practice today, in town for the Players for a Purpose event after practice. Jauan Jennings has returned from the broken finger. There he is, taking a handoff at the beginning of 49ers practice, right ahead of Brian Robinson Jr., who is now wearing number 3. Robinson has switched jersey numbers from 30 to 3. Sky Moore, you'll see him in a bit, to number 9. Lynch and Shanahan joking around before the serious part of practice started. And a lot of good work happening during the special teams period. Individual kind of work in the D-line room. You saw Nick Bosa with the takeoff there. This is CJ West working with assistant 49ers defensive line coach Greg Scruggs, who played for the Seahawks back in the day. The Hulk, he's back. That was one of the moves today. The 49ers were able to re-sign Sebastian Valdez to the practice squad. So turns out all the freakouts were premature. And to close things up, that is Sky Moore wearing the number 9 jersey for the 49ers. So Moore from 6 to number 9. Brian Robinson from 30 to number 3, both single-digit guys. Players think that the numbers make them look faster. And hey, both Brian Robinson and Sky Moore are decently fast football players. Sky Moore can get off that line of scrimmage really, really quickly. 1.46 in that 10-yard split. Also happens to be one of the strengths of Brian Robinson. So you heard some of the good news. You saw some of the good news there with Upton Stout back on the practice field, with Jauan Jennings back on the practice field. We got some positive intel from John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan as well. Dominic Puni is trending to be back by week 1, which when he got hurt and was walking around without being able to bend his knee in Las Vegas, that seemed like a huge long shot. I mean, back then we were even talking about a potential injured reserve placement for Dominic Puni, but the guy's a warrior. The guy seems to be healing fast, and there's a good shot the 49ers will have Puni lined up at right guard and Ben Barch at left guard for the season opener at Seattle. Also trending in a positive direction to play in week 1 is Yetur Gross-Matos. Not back out of practice yet, but the 49ers did activate Yetur from PUP at the 53-man cut down, so he's taken up a roster spot. That told us they'd expected him back within the first 4 weeks. Now we know that they hope that he's going to be back for week 1, which is really big. I feel that Yetur is an important hinge point of this 49ers defense. He can play outside, he can play inside. He's going to be used a lot like Mykel Williams, the 49ers first round pick, the rookie edge rusher. And you need a lot of defensive linemen. I think that the general theme of this construction, I know I used the Transamerica Pyramid as metaphor yesterday. Well, these skyscrapers, they drill down into the ground, into the foundation, right? And the 49ers, with their original 53-man roster and with the subsequent moves, such as the waiver claim for Jordan Jefferson, an athletic, strong defensive tackle, it's very, very clear that they are solidifying this foundation. I mean, Drew Moss on the offensive side of the ball made the 49ers 53-man roster, so they're really caring about the offensive line. 10 O-linemen, which is the most have made the team under Shanahan and Lynch in that initial cut. Drew Moss might be a developmental guy, but they're certainly valuing his presence on the team. And then the other side of the ball, they began with 11 defensive linemen, and they still have 11, even though Evan Anderson has been shuttled off to make room for the waiver claim. Jordan Jefferson, formerly of Jacksonville. Jacksonville had a personnel executive who went from the 49ers to the Jaguars and now is back with San Francisco, Ethan Waugh. And that might be one of the reasons why the 49ers are so comfortable bringing in former Jaguars into the building. Obviously, Jacksonville also signed Eric Armstead, a former 49er, but the newest former Jaguar joining somebody like Luke Farrell with San Francisco now is Jordan Jefferson, the defensive tackle. 49ers keep 11 defensive linemen on the 53. Then they've got more on the practice squad. I showed you that Sebastian Valdez was back, so the freakouts there were premature. Trevis Gibson is back. I know a lot of people liked how he performed at the end of the preseason, or basically throughout training camp in the preseason when he was with the 49ers. And so is William Bradley King. In fact, the 49ers still have one practice squad spot left, and I suspect that they're waiting to see if Evan Anderson clears waivers. And if he does, well, they could keep on loading up on defensive linemen. They could toss Evan Anderson in on that practice squad. That would be 11 rostered defensive linemen on the 53 and 4 on the practice squad. That would be 15 in the building for the 49ers. So we will see if San Francisco does indeed manage to get Evan Anderson back into the fold, because it would be a robust room. And you could see what they're doing. They're going with a lot of young guys, and they're going to come at you in waves. And I think that, I've been on the record saying I don't think the 49ers defense is going to be great, especially to start this season. I think they could develop into that under Robert Saleh. But from what I'm getting here, watching this football team at practice, I've been out here all of training camp, I sense that this defense is going to be a problem for people. Again, it doesn't mean they're going to be great. It doesn't even mean they're going to be good at the very start of the year. But I think the hunger, the strength, the size, I mean, even Alfred Collins, even if he's inactive at the start of the season, as he continues to develop, I think that it just represents what the 49ers have loaded up on for Robert Saleh. And I think that defensive line is going to blossom into something that creates big-time issues for opposing offenses and ultimately spearheads a good defense, because Robert Saleh has an awesome track record. But I think from the very get-go, this defense can be a problem. And if it does prove to be opportunistic right away, well, the 49ers can absolutely be a team that is in contention from the very get-go of this 2025 season. Because they've got Brock Purdy, they've got George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey on that offensive end. They've got Ricky Pearsall. The receiver room is still something that's being built, but it might end up being Pearsall, somebody like Russell Gage, obviously MVS on this team en route to the Bay Area, maybe even Kendrick Bourne to begin the season. They're going to be running a lot of big personnel, I can tell you that, to feature McCaffrey and George Kittle early on, but they've got the quarterback to bind everything together. Other roster move today, Thomas Morstead, the punter's back. So worry not, the 49ers have their punter back in the building. That was a procedural move for the 49ers, right? With Morstead off the team for, 18 hours, then back on it. Jacob Cowing is now on injured reserve after having made the initial 53-man roster. A lot of people wondering why Cowing didn't make the initial IR cut down list. And it's because if you land on that list, there are 2 spots for it. Kevin Givens did. You automatically count as one of the 49ers' 8 returns. You can only return 8 guys from IR, PUP, or NFI over the course of the season. So the 49ers didn't want to use one of those on Jacob Cowing just in case he's not able to return this year, just in case they don't want to activate him this year. I think it's an indication of where Jacob Cowing is at within the larger picture. I think ultimately the 49ers hope that this is going to be a really robust receiving room once Demarcus Robinson and Brandon Ayuk are both back on the football team. But they wanted to maintain their flexibility with Jacob Cowing. They're sure that Kevin Givens is going to return at some point, so one of the 8 spots is burned for Kevin Givens. They're obviously not sure in Jacob Cowing's case, but they did want to leave themselves the option of him returning. So while Morstead was not on the initial 53, Cowing was. That gives Cowing a shot to return 4 or 5 weeks in, however long it is in this 2025 season. It also proved to be that Russell Gage was a procedural move. We said he's either going to be on the 53 or on the practice squad. I know some national reporters said practice squad. I said, hold up, I think Russell Gage might be back on the 53. That is indeed going to be the case. He got a nice little day off today because the 49ers did not make the necessary cut to bring Russell Gage officially back, so he couldn't practice. Veteran deserves it. It's been a long road back from the patellar tendon tear, but he's going to be a big part of this 49ers team on the 53-man roster. And I'd also argue that Curtis Robinson is a procedural move for the 49ers. He didn't make the initial 53. He's on the practice squad, but what they're going to do is they're going to use all 3 of his practice squad elevations because he's a core 4 special teams player. And once those are expired, other guys will be hurt. That's just the nature of this league. And I would expect the 49ers to bump Curtis Robinson up to the 53-man roster. So through all those moves and then through the suspended list for Demarcus Robinson, those are like 4 moves that have essentially turned the initial 53-man roster into a 57-man roster. And you could expect the 49ers to really live off of some of these roster tricks because they did have to deal with a lot of injuries, especially concentrated ones over the course of camp. But the very good news is they're healing now, right? I've talked about Jordan James back. I've talked about Upton Stout back. Michael Williams, CJ West returned a few days ago. The entire 49ers roster that I have up online, a lot less of the pink injury shades. So this is exactly what you want to see from the football team entering that regular season. The first regular season practice is going to be next Wednesday as the 49ers prepare for Seattle. They'll have a bonus practice before that Labor Day here on Monday. And to put a bow on this, to recap some of the moves today, because we got to get all the guys the 49ers signed to the practice squad today. Adrian Martinez on his way. I mentioned, John Lynch confirmed that, but the dual threat quarterback is going to be here in Santa Clara, probably in time to practice tomorrow. That will be the 49ers' number 3 on the practice squad. Sincere McCormick should also join this team tomorrow. That has not been made official yet. But the running back, who is built a lot like Jordan James, actually, and Corey Kiner. By the way, the 49ers reached an injury settlement with Corey Kiner today. That means that at the end of his injury window, they have determined and agreed upon a time where Corey Kiner can sign with somebody else. So I'm guessing that's going to be about a month from now or so, once his high ankle sprain is healed. At the end of that time, plus 3 weeks, if Corey Kiner is not signed to a team, the 49ers will be able to bring him back. But Sincere McCormick in that place now instead, running back on the practice squad for the 49ers. Robbie Chosen on the practice squad. We saw him out on the field along with Malik Turner and Junior Bergen. Braden Willis, the tight end, lost out to Jake Tonjes, but is one of the 49ers' 4 tight ends in the building. Nick Zakel and Drake Nugent, both back in the building. They didn't make the 53, but they are on the practice squad. I told you about the defensive linemen already. Gibson, Sebastian Valdez, William Bradley King. Linebackers, I told you about Curtis Robinson, Jalen Graham also back in the building on the practice squad. We hadn't seen Eli Apple in a couple weeks, but the veteran cornerback is an emergency option for the 49ers now on the practice squad, and so is Derek Canteen, who could play both corner or safety. So that is all that happened today. A busy day of transactions. Yesterday, I invoked the skyscraper analogy. I will continue invoking it today. The 49ers are not yet done. I think tomorrow you're going to have grand opening. You're going to be able to actually use this roster tomorrow, but it still won't be a finished product. You're always trying to add bells and whistles. You're always renovating things. But tomorrow we could say that the final version of the initial roster is out, unless that's an oxymoron. But hope you've enjoyed following along. Levi's Stadium ready to host the 49ers this year. The team building what it needs to. 53-man cut down has passed us. The practice squad is almost all assembled. Remember, one spot left on that practice squad. Maybe for Evan Anderson, maybe for somebody else. I'll have answers for you tomorrow.